Hi, welcome back. It's Professor P giving you a little bit of anthropology today. All right, I hope you guys are staying healthy and safe in today's world. All right, today we're going to talk about political life, social order, disorder. So if you're in my anthropology courses, make sure you follow along with your concept sheets. All right, political life, when we think about political life, we think about government and we think about presidents and we think about Congress, but actually political life is just how societies resolve conflict, how societies resolve violence. All right, let's get to this. One of the things that we talk about is a territorial group. A territorial group is just the size of the community. Are you a big community? Are you a small community, right? So we're going to talk about these kinds of things. Within the territorial group, we have what's called political integration. It's where political activities are organized and centralized in the group. All right, so make sure you follow along. The definitions are also inside the chapter. All right, let's get to it. There's 4 types of political organizations that we're going to talk about. A band, a tribe, a chiefdom, and a state. Make sure you number them on your concept sheet. All right, remember a band? Remember we saw the Hadza video? And the Hadza were a band society. They were hunting and they were gathering. But when we look at them politically, they're actually politically autonomous. They have very informal, right, politics. Everybody has a say. It's like sort of pure democracy. They have headsmen, but they have no real power. They may say, hey, let's move west. Somebody may go, let's move east. Nobody has power. It's literally done by votes. All right? Very informal. If somebody tries to rise above in a band because they're egalitarian, they're equal, they could be shot. They could be left alone, right? They could be left behind the group because everybody has a say. It's equal. All right, let's get on to a tribe. A tribe is a bit bigger, right? A tribe incorporates kin and non-kin into the group. A tribe also only integrates when there's an outside threat, okay? So there's 3 different areas and 3 different concepts you want to know in a tribe. One is called the segmentary lineage system. Segmentary lineage system just says the tribe is based on kin and it's structured around family. Family becomes very important in the tribe. It may not be that important in your life and everybody's life, but in a tribe, it really is. All right. Another concept is called complementary opposition. So you got to complement your kin even if you're in opposition to them. So let me give you an example. Let's say there's a couple tribes and you're arguing like with your aunt and you're arguing with your brother and you're not arguing with, let's say, a cousin. Whoever is closest to you in your kin line is who you have to side with, even if you don't agree with them. You know that sibling sort of starts trouble. You're at a bar and they get in a fight and you believe they're wrong, but you still got to back them up because they're your sibling. That sort of complementary opposition. Even when you're in opposition to them, you got to compliment them, right? So even the cousin that you might be good friends with that you think was right, because he's not closest to you in your kin line, you can't side with him. All right, you know we have all those. All right, let's get to the last term within a tribe is called an Aidset system. An Aidset system is male-oriented. It's sort of a group of boys, they walk through life together at a very young age. They come together for political reasons too. So let's just say in one tribe, they get together at the age of 4 to go into a male hut. Then they get together at the age of 7 to learn about weapons. Then they get together at the age of 9 to learn about marriage and alliances. They walk through life. It's sort of like your fictive kin. So when there's an outside threat, you call upon your age group. All right, you call upon your age set. It's important to understand that. It's politically motivated and it's really male-centered. Females don't really have age set systems, right? And so it's really a male-centered organization. All right, good. A tribe's a little bit bigger than a band now. Now we're moving on to a chiefdom. A chiefdom could have millions of people involved. So a chiefdom is where you have a chief at the head, right? And they incorporate several communities that don't necessarily speak the same language. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about a tribe. A tribe is a chiefdom is very important. It's very different than the tribe because the chiefdom is much larger. Okay. The biggest chiefdom to ever exist was the Mayan Chiefdom. The Maya had the same chief for 72 years, Chief Pikal. He incorporated several different societies, right, into the chiefdom. Imagine he ran what was called Mesoamerica. And Mesoamerica was all of Mexico, Central America, which was El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua. They were all speaking a variety of different languages. But they all came under one big cheese, all right? Because you had council chiefs and district chiefs and lower level chiefs, but you had the big cheese, right? You have the big chief Pikal. It incorporated a lot, but the chief really gains the power by his generosity, okay? So when you do redistribution and people go and give to the chief can't keep it. He has to give it back out into society. He gains that respect by that generous nature of his, okay? He was chief for 72 years, so they followed and they believed in him. They also believed he had mana, that he was related to the gods and he had a connection to the gods. Within these chiefdoms, they also did blood sacrifice and human sacrifice, right? They believed that human energy and human labor was very valuable during the times of the pyramid building, right? During times of big monument constructions, right? So that becomes very important. The chiefdom is also important because it's all about kin as well. So in order to be part of the chiefdom, right, you had to be part of that family, right? Part of that prestigious family. So that becomes important and an important aspect of the chiefdom. Redistribution was highly valued in those kinds of societies as well, giving back into those societies. Now, one of the things that becomes important as well, right, is the last kind of political organization, which is the state. You guys should be very familiar with that because you live in a state, right? And our state has 50, right? We have 50 states in the United States. A state is very formally organized. We have a lot of things, right? We have a formalized language. We have laws. We have the military, taxation, right? It's very structured. We have millions and millions of people that are living within a state. So it's large at this point, right? We have education. There's all these things. You guys should really be familiar because that's where you guys reside, right? So that becomes really important to understand. But one of the things that we talk about in anthropology is this. Why do we follow the state? What are the legitimacy for state power? There's four different theories that actually back that up. The very first theory is called divine descent. And I'm going to tell you what that is. Divine descent is that the gods, right, told you to follow me, so follow me. So early state societies, people would begin to follow leaders because they claimed divine descent. The gods told me to tell you to follow me, so you just do it, right? There's lots of different ones. The second theory behind why people follow the state is called like the authoritarian figure. And basically, children are taught to obey authority, so you just obey the state. We teach our children to obey people in authority, like police officers and teachers, right? And judges. So in essence, you just follow and you don't question. The third one, which is really interesting, is that we follow a state because we're fooled by state power. We're fooled by the government, right? We could debate that for a long time. All right, the last one is that we follow a state because it provides us with real and rational advantages. What does that mean? Like education, protection, employment, that there has to be real advantages for us to follow. All right, let's move on now. All right, turn your concept sheet to page 2, resolution of conflict. How do these societies resolve conflict? Because there's always going to be ways that we resolve it, right? The very first one is called avoidance. It's very hard in a state to do that. So avoidance, you could typically do it in like a band society. If you are having conflict with people within the society or near the society, you could just move. Bands are mobile. They're mobile groups. They're hunting and gathering. So you could just move and walk away, right? It's going to be too difficult for us to do that. Second way we resolve conflict is with community action. Community action is things that are voted in or brought about by a community. One of the most extreme versions of community action is capital punishment, the death penalty. How many of you are for or against capital punishment? We could debate that for a while too, right? Capital punishment right? And the death penalty, there's a lot behind that. We have to look at the politics, the economics, and all of these different things, right? But that is one way people resolve conflict, right? And it's going to vary state to state with our ideologies behind community action and capital punishment. All right. The third way, and there's two different ones in the third way we resolve conflict, is mediation and negotiation. All right. So let's get to this. Negotiation in some societies is where people in a very informal manner try to resolve the conflict themselves. All right. They don't use any outsiders. With mediation, there's a third party who's very informal that'll start to help you try to bring about a resolution. We've used this more in the United States in recent time, where it's custody mediation or divorce mediation, but this is sort of newer in the United States, okay? But there's a third informal party to help you. All right, the next one is called an apology. We're talking about like ritualistic apologies, dancing apologies, where these apologies are more formalized within different kinds of societies. Band societies use apologies. Like we say, I'm sorry, but it's not really a political move. It could be political and ritualistic in these other kinds of societies. Another way we resolve conflicts is appeals to the supernatural. All right. We're talking about an oath and an ordeal. An oath is where you bear witness to a deity that you're telling the truth. How many of you have been to court? You swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God, right? That's an oath that a deity is bearing witness to if you're telling the truth or not. An ordeal is an act that you put somebody through to determine guilt or innocence. Now imagine hot stones, hot flames, right? I mean, these are where, remember the witch trials? We're going to get to that on our chapter on religion and magic, but even that was an ordeal, right? So when we look at something like an ordeal, right, we want to determine innocence or guilt by putting them through an act, typically with hot water, boiling water, or fire. Can you imagine in some societies, they could put their hands in boiling water, and if they have, blisters, maybe they're guilty. If they don't, maybe they're guilty. Either way, right? They determine those kinds of guilt or innocence by doing those acts. And those acts can be very painful, right? The next one is the one that we use. It's called adjudication. It's very formal. We typically have a judge. We typically have a group of peers. And we typically have codified laws to bring us to justice. It's formal, right? And we typically go to court. We typically have to follow laws. We typically have our peers bring us to any kind of guilt or innocence. All right. We do adjudication in the United States. Many of you may have been part of the process as witnesses, as being called to court, as being on a jury duty. Maybe you committed a crime. It'll be our secret. All right. Let's get to some of these concepts now. Crime. That's right there in the bullet points on your concept sheets. Crime is violence not considered legitimate. All right. All of these ones are in your book as well. Warfare is violence between political entities. All right. Civil war is violence within the same subunit of a population that was once politically unified. Right. Codified laws are what we have. Those are laws that are written down that could bring you to justice. Penal code so-and-so says you shouldn't drink and drive. This says you shouldn't commit murder, right? And killing, right? Codified laws are written down and then can bring us to justice. Some of you, I'm sure, have broken some of those laws. Our secret again. Universality of the law just says this. All of us have a peaceful way of resolving conflict. That's it. All societies do. It doesn't necessarily mean they have codified laws. It's just a universality of the law, okay? Now, why do some societies have oaths and ordeals? Typically, those are smaller knit societies where they know what people are doing anyway. All right. They're not going to really be effective in a society like ours where we have a huge population. Okay. We're not going to really know what even our neighbors are doing. Why do some societies have laws and others don't? We have laws because we're overpopulated. We have a huge population. We have laws that are going to bring people to justice because of that. Right. It's going to be too difficult to use any other means. All right. The last two concepts on your sheet are feuding and raiding. Feuding is violence between family members where you want to take like revenge. All of you guys have either heard of, been in, or been part of a feud. You know, mom's fighting with aunt or grandfather's fighting with uncle. Even if you're not directly part of the feud, all families have had a feud, trust me. And some of them could get really nasty. Sometimes it's over money, it's over death. It could be over various different kinds of, arguments. Think about some of the feuds your families are in right now. And if we were in class, we'd be discussing it. All right, rating is the last concept on this sheet. And rating is where it's organized and you're typically going into a society because you want a resource. Early on, societies were rated for women, rated for feud. Typically, you're not aware of it either. So sometimes the people, it's sort of like strike attacks and raiding, slavery, raiding, taking people away and then using them as cheap labor, right? We talked about that on our chapter on race and those kind of issues. Hopefully, right, you guys learned a lot with political life and social order disorder. Stay tuned for psychology and culture to come ahead. Professor P out.